You know what this is, don't you? This is voodoo.
Nonsensical research and experimentation.
Witchcraft.
You don't believe this, do you?
The cult is full of superstition and mysticism. We're scientists.
All this talk of scientific explanation, it's sinful, that's what it is.
It's your imagination, I think.
My imagination. It's not, I tell you. Here, I know what it is. It's here.
Probably Cursed. Welcome to episode 3 of the Probably Cursed podcast. For today's cursometer testing, we have the magical Battle of Britain, the disappearance of a man looking for Alaska's secret black pyramid, the sickening and rude effects of a haunted nunnery, and how not to perform an exorcism on your mother-in-law. Also, during our shopping break, we'll reveal artifact number 3, which will be up for sale on the Probably Cursed Museum. I'm your Probably Cursed host, Chris.
And I'm Cheryl, also probably cursed.
To be determined. One day we'll put ourselves through the cursometer.
To be fair, I am going to say right now that you could try an exorcism on your mother-in-law. I have no qualms about that. Just don't follow the steps of the guy in the article.
That's fair. I think for as religious as your mom is, she may take great offense to being exorcised.
That's fair.
Well, as we do at the start of every episode, we will feed our Lord Carnarvon cursometer some recent news in order to calibrate it for our main topic. We'll activate the Lord cursometer now. As we were alluding to, our first story: man jailed after setting fire to mother-in-law in exorcism ritual. This is written by Yoon Min Sik from the Korea Herald on December 13th of 2023, so my aunt's birthday.
Hooray!
A Seoul court on Wednesday sentenced a 44-year-old man to 2 years and 6 months in prison for setting his mother-in-law on fire while performing what he claimed to be an exorcism.
Wait, that's it? For setting your mother-in-law on fire?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
2 years, 6 months.
Yeah, doesn't seem very long.
I guess maybe he would have gotten more, because I think she survives.
Oh, okay.
The defendant, surnamed Kim, was taking care of the 68-year-old victim at a hospital in Newon-gu, northeastern Seoul, on May 29th, when he lit pieces of tissue paper on fire and threw them at her. The victim sustained second-degree burns on various parts of her body, including her scalp, left hand, face, and neck. Kim's lawyer claimed that throwing the tissue was part of an exorcism ritual and that he did not mean to injure the victim, saying that the tissue set fire to her hair only because she moved.
Well, what was she supposed to do? Just sit there and let him... Where was he aiming, first of all?
You know, I guess it must have been around her face. A bit of advice for you out there: if you're getting exorcised, remain completely still, especially if your son-in-law is throwing flaming bits of paper at you.
Yes, that's probably a good call.
Kim also claimed to have been suffering from mental illness at the time of the crime and was reportedly taking medication for his depression, which had a possible side effect of hallucination. The court, however, dismissed his claims that Kim was not of sound mind, saying that he was fully aware of the potential for damage to the victim, the bed, and the hospital. The court dismissed the attempted murder charges, saying that the evidence presented by the prosecution is not sufficient to prove his intent to kill the victim. So I guess they decided he did mean to exorcise her and not kill her, and it just meant accidental fire in her hospital room.
I feel like this is a potential future episode of trying to look up exorcism rituals in other countries, because that feels very, random. Throwing bits of fire at someone who needs demons removed.
Yeah. I feel like that would work just as well on a person as it does a demon.
Yeah.
Many things are vulnerable to fire.
I don't know. That's a weird one. Because I don't know enough about Korea, I have no way of knowing if that's actually part of the exorcism ritual, but that feels very witchcraft child type stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Is something supposed to happen? They say it was because she moved, but if she didn't move, does that mean the demon would have left her body? I'm confused.
I guess so. If she didn't flinch, the demon would, and then he could grab it by the shoulders and shove it out into the hospital hall and give it a kick in the butt.
Yeah, that makes sense. I gotcha. I got it now.
Don't let your son-in-law do an exorcism on you. Mother-in-laws out there.
Our next story is a man who went to Alaska to look for the Black Pyramid and went missing. This article is by Zoe Mitchell, and it was on December 11th, 2023, from the Anomalian. Anomalian.com?
It reads better than it's said out loud.
Yes. 41-year-old Nathan Campbell hired a charter plane out of Talkeetna to fly him to a small lake in northwest corner of Denali National Park. Along with some basic camping gear, Campbell brought a hefty cache of food stored in plastic tubs and 2-way satellite communicator to check in with his wife and his kids. He planned to spend the next 4 months alone, smack dab in the middle of interior Alaska. But Campbell wasn't there for fun. He was on a mission. Campbell had come to Carey Lake to search for something that until now only existed in the darkest, least updated corners of the internet: the Black Pyramid. A massive underground structure rumored to be 4 times the size of the famous Cheops in Egypt, and thousands, if not millions, of years old.
So older than people. So I think people are about 1 million years old.
Well, the other thing is that people wouldn't have, even if that was the case, people didn't arrive in North America until quite a bit later. So who would have built it?
I'm going to go by the fact that it's 4 times the size of pyramids that we know people built. Who is bigger than people? This is a Bigfoot pyramid.
Ah, good call.
It may be black, so it absorbs the heat in the Arctic because it's cold up there all the time.
I'm going to go with dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Dinosaurs built the pyramids. Conspiracy theorists claim that the structure is so powerful, it's important to national security, so tantamount that all traces of the pyramid and the military base believed to protect it have been wiped from satellite imagery. Although bush pilots, trappers, and indigenous people have traveled the area around Carey Lake for generations, a quick search through the Fairbanks Daily News Miner archives shows few references to a giant alien pyramid or to a top-secret military base in central Alaska. In the early 90s came the real evidence of the Black Pyramid. Scientists studying shock waves of Chinese underground nuclear testing recorded a grainy pyramid-shaped spot of interference about 700 feet below the surface of interior Alaska. The Black Pyramid got more traction after a hot tip from an anonymous naval captain on the legendary radio program Coast to Coast. The captain worked on a top-secret radar installations in Alaska. For years, he noticed that a mysterious, massively powerful source of electromagnetism near Lake Minchumina was disrupting his base's aircraft and communications. Now, after seeing the results of the Chinese test, the captain realized the source of the disturbance was a massive underground, pyramid-shaped structure in the heart of Alaska that is not shown on any map or satellite imagery. Not surprisingly, when the captain brought these facts to his superior, they threatened him with a court-martial. Yeah, probably because of mental health concerns.
Don't tell anyone your theories, please.
Especially when you're in the military. That sounds like a dangerous prospect. With the captain's report, everything came together. Secret bases, government cover-ups, global warfare, ancient aliens, pyramid power, to create the story of the Black Pyramid. The story that Campbell, if he followed any of the internet lore, surely planned his summer vacation around. No one knows for certain if Campbell believed any of this. He may have spent a month poking around every clump of dwarf birch looking for a secret door to the command center, or Campbell's quest could have been an excuse for someone to get some alone time in the wilderness, to tramp around in the woods on a mission they didn't need a resolution to.
I can understand that. I'm going to the woods to hunt for Bigfoot, and then you just sort of camp for like 8 days and go for long hikes. And you go, nope, didn't find him. I'll try again next year.
Well, why would you tell people you were going to look for a Black Pyramid? Like, that sounds worse. Like, if you just wanted some alone time in the wilderness, why don't you say you're looking for treasure, or going gold panning, or hunting, or...
I'm guessing it was a made-up excuse. It was something he thought that no one would want to invite themselves along to.
I see.
They'll be like, have fun. Like, maybe he is just an internet conspiracy nut, and they're just like, you go ahead and do that.
I don't know, if I was a kid and my dad was like, I'm gonna go look for a giant black pyramid in Alaska, I would have been like, sign me up.
Mm-hmm. Me too. But there are those people out there that don't have much curiosity in their life.
I suppose. Regardless, somewhere out there, he got himself into trouble. Travel in any direction from Carrie Lake would have been slow, difficult, and dangerous. Did Campbell surprise a bear? Fall into a beaver pond? Did he get caught in a freak snowstorm? No one knows. All the National Park Service has to go on are scattered testimonies and fragments of evidence. Before the plane left, Campbell gave his charter pilot instructions to pick him up at Carrie Lake in mid-September, right before the onset of the Alaskan winter. That was the last time anyone saw Campbell alive. Sometime in mid-June, Campbell's satellite texts stopped. His wife contacted the pilot, who told her to call a company flying helicopters to check the site of Campbell's last transmission. The results of her call, or if she tried to actually instigate a search, are unknown. It wasn't until Campbell's missed September 15th pickup date that the National Park Service had sent a search team to Carrie Lake. After a few days of beating through the bush, rangers found Campbell's gear, cracked food bins, moldy clothes, a battered tent, but no signs of Nathan. The only clues were rodent-chewed remnants of his diary buried in the tent. The last entry, dated sometime in late June, simply stated, "Went to get water," and then he simply disappeared. The National Park Service flew over the area for several days, but eventually had to abandon the search. Campbell, if he was still alive, was hopefully prepared. The icy winds and sub-zero temperatures of the winter could come at any moment. Soon snow would cover the landscape and make foot travel virtually impossible to survive. Campbell was as good as dead. On October 1st, 2020, Campbell was declared missing. Wherever he is, hopefully he found what he was looking for. Somewhere in the deep Alaskan wilderness, the search for the Black Pyramid continues on.
When I found this news story, I immediately thought, I want to do an episode on the Black Pyramid. It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot to it.
Mm-mm.
I'll have to track down that episode of Coast to Coast AM, see if I can listen to the broadcast. So I bet other people are looking for it, not just this one guy.
Yeah. The one thing that's weird to me, which almost makes me wonder whether this is a real story or not,
Yeah.
is that it was written in 2023, but he's been missing since 2020. I would think that all the missing person shows that I watch or something like that, I would have heard something about this guy.
I did look for, because the Anomalian, it's a paranormal news site.
Right.
And I don't know if they do a whole lot of fact checking. So I did try to look for a real news report, quote unquote real news.
Yes.
All I could really find is there is a missing persons poster on the Alaska State website for a person with that name, but it doesn't include any of the details that he was looking for a Black Pyramid.
Fair. It's not really the sort of thing you want to post on there anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
That might change people's minds on whether they go find some weirdo in the forest.
Correct.
Yeah, mysterious Black Pyramid in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. If it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we will feed in one more story into the cursometer here to complete our calibration testing. Ghost hunters left sick after encounter at one of UK's most haunted buildings. This is by Alison Brinkworth, who wrote for The Mirror. The date is December 14th, 2023. A group of paranormal hunters were left feeling sick after they were reportedly confronted by a bad-mouthed ghost after they stepped inside a haunted nunnery. TikTok hunter Tony Ferguson said he was left stunned by the spooky encounter which allegedly took place in the nunnery on Ranelagh Road, Malvern in the Midlands. We're not going to pronounce any place names correct.
No, not today.
Especially if it's vaguely Welsh.
Mm-hmm.
He claimed a ghost swore at his team and said they heard a bizarre dragging noise inside the Victorian building when they visited on December 9th. Tony and his fellow paranormal investigators visited the landmark to find out if long-standing claims of the nunnery and its substantial grounds being haunted were true. He said, "While we were all together in the basement area, we all heard a dragging noise above us. Natalie said she had never heard anything like it before. We then began our investigation and were shocked to hear tapping noises banging doors, and disembodied voices telling us to, for our edited version of the podcast, F off and get out. We even had responses to some of our questions. The group's devices reportedly responded to paranormal activity with bleeps during their exploration of the nunnery. Tony described it as a phenomenal sight, reports Birmingham Live. We had responses from several devices that we had around the rooms when asking questions, added Tony. We heard footsteps coming up the stairs whilst we were in the upper floors investigating. We had investigators starting to feel sick and uncomfortable and wanting to leave the room. The nunnery left us with many things that we could not explain. Even Natalie was shocked when she heard the dragging noise across the floor as we were all together. She could not offer an explanation for this. He added, "We were all shocked by the paranormal activity," admitted Tony, "but we hope to return in the future to see if we can capture more evidence or try to debunk what we encountered." Full video and Tony's other paranormal experiences can be found at his TikTok channel, Tony Ferguson Ghost Hunter 1. Because I guess Tony Ferguson Ghost Hunter was already taken.
I guess so. Why does he want to go back? Also, I guess it didn't say, sick in what way.
Yeah, I couldn't find much information on what they meant by sick.
Maybe the pressure change messed with their ears. Maybe the nunnery was wired with, EMF pumps.
And if it was a nunnery ghost, do nuns curse? Is a nunnery a place of worship, do you think? Because you're not allowed to curse in a place of worship, I don't believe.
No, you wouldn't be cursing. My suspicion is that somebody's going to claim there's a demon there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd have to look it up. It's funny because they're like, it's one of the most haunted places and I've never heard of it.
Yeah, me neither.
No. But, yeah, I would say somebody's going to claim it was a demon or something else, because no, nuns don't typically curse.
Well, I believe that is enough data for the cursometer to calibrate itself for our main topic. I will activate the cursometer now and have it tabulate its results.
Please stand by.
So, for the first story of the soul man exorcising his mother-in-law, it is determined the real curse is people.
Definitely.
If you were feeling like your depression medication was putting you in the wrong state of mind, don't start exorcising people.
I don't know if antidepressants actually cause hallucinations.
No, I think that was just his lame-ass excuse for flubbing the exorcism. And now his mother-in-law has both demons and second-degree burns. The second story for the missing man's trip to the Black Pyramid, the cursometers determined that the man is definitely cursed because he is not returned and all of his food containers are cracked and his clothes got moldy. So he ain't coming back.
I blame bears.
Probably most likely bears. Or he fell into the Black Pyramid and could not get out. Maybe it's like that season of Channel Zero where they went into the one house and they came out and it was an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Maybe he fell into a different universe on the other side of the pyramid.
I hope so.
And for the last story, for the haunted nunnery, probably cursed.
Yes.
It's making people sick, and it's also cursing them, literally, with curse words. Right. And before we get on to our final and main topic for the episode, we'll just go over to the Probably Cursed Museum and Gift Shop. So Cheryl and I have traveled far and wide to antique stores, estate sales, thrift shops to find the eeriest and most probably cursed items to put them up for sale to raise funds for our future Probably Cursed Museum. For today, we release artifact number 3, available for sale now at probablycursed.etsy.com. It is an antique razor kit. It's a compact portable shaving kit in a black metal case. Labeled on the case are the words, "The Searchlight, Culbertson, Montana," looked it up, and the Searchlight is the name of a newspaper in Culbertson that started in 1902. So my guess is that the origin of the kit is that it's a corporate gift, probably to a reporter, newspaper employee.
Nice.
Like, you know, like some companies like, oh, you've been with us for 20 years, you get a watch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they gave out shaving kits.
That's possible.
It also includes a safety razor inside that comes in 2 easy-to-assemble pieces. So it's made for traveling and packing away in small compartments.
Mm-hmm.
Probably your old-timey newsman suitcase back in the day. It somehow made it from Culbertson, Montana to north of the border to our local antique mall where we had found it on one visit. What drew us to the kit? One, it's such a personal item. It might have been carried around by some journalist to prepare for his interviews. Do we know if it's been passed down as a family heirloom many, many times before it made to the antique mall? We're not quite sure. Comes with no story, and we couldn't really find much about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it drew us to it, and it's probably cursed nature. And you can see photos of it on our Instagram and our TikTok as well. Facebook page as well should also have photos. The history of razors, both in fiction and real life stories, have had some oddities. In terms of fiction, Sweeney Todd comes to mind.
Yep.
There's been a few real life cursed shaving incidents, and these stories are courtesy of Mental Floss. The first one, John Thoreau was the brother of the famous American writer and transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau. In the winter of 1841, while taking part in his daily shave, John Thoreau cut himself with his razor. A few days later, he came down with lockjaw and died in Henry David's arms. So just imagine shaving, and then a couple days later, you're dead. Might be why a lot of dudes are sporting big, bristly beards these days.
Out of curiosity, does it mention Lord Carnarvon in here?
No.
Oh, well then I'll add that one at the end.
Sounds good. I'll continue on with these 2 more stories here, and you can tack yours on. Michael F. Farley was the next one. He immigrated to the U.S. from Ireland when he was 18 years old, way back in 1881. And he ran a successful liquor business in New York and was elected to Congress in 1915. But his story was cut short after a visit to the barber shop, and little did he know that the brush the barber was using to create the lather was contaminated with anthrax.
What?
Farley was infected with the virus and died a few days later. And the last one here is John Henry Taylor, who was a horticulturist, and he took a trip on Red Line cruise ship back in 1911. In between matches of shuffleboard, Mr. Taylor felt his beard was getting a little rough and decided to visit the onboard barber. The waves must have been pretty rough that day because the barber gave old John Henry a little nick on his neck. Because small cuts are par for the course when getting a shave, John Henry didn't think much of it and returned to his cabin. But later that night, his throat began to swell up and fill with fluid. The ship doctor said it was just a case of blood poisoning and told Taylor that it would soon heal itself.
Yeah, that's how blood poisoning works.
That's a good ship doctor. 2 days later, the swelling increased and Taylor could no longer speak. A week after the initial cut, he suffocated and died from severe edema.
Wow. I'm surprised it didn't bring up Lord Carnarvon, because that's one of the things from my childhood that I remember was his death, the curse of Tutankhamun. So he went to Tutankhamun's tomb shortly after Howard Carter discovered it, and 2 months later he died. They believe that he got blood poisoning after cutting a mosquito bite accidentally while he was shaving. So the bite became infected with, I'm not going to pronounce the Latin name, but with blood poisoning.
Which should go away on its own after 2 days, according to this doctor I heard once.
Rumors spread at the time that he died that the lights in Cairo, which is where the hospital was where he passed away, went out and plunged the entire city into darkness. Reportedly, at the same time back at his home in the UK, his pet dog gave a great howl and died.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Lord Carnarvon died hard.
He died hard, which is why I think it's so funny they didn't even bring him up.
Yeah.
He is like the most famous shaving curse accident to me.
Yeah, and he's the namesake of our curseometer.
Yeah.
The Lord Carnarvon curseometer.
Oh, that's crazy. Well,
and with all of these stories about people dying horribly from one little nick on the razor, if you do decide to purchase this razor for yourself and decide to shave yourself, it is old and a tiny bit rusty. So you too could die in a few days from a razor cut. And I'm going to say right now, if you're buying it, you are absolving us of all responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Get your tetanus shots, boys and girls.
Get your tetanus shots. It's not so bad. I got one last year.
Mm-hmm. And
that concludes our museum gift shop segment here. Now we'll get into our main topic.
All right. I am doing the story of the magical Battle of Britain and Dion Fortune. The year was 1939, and it was only 1 month since the start of World War II. Dion Fortune began writing letters to the members of the Fraternity of the Inner Light, telling them that they must all meditate every Sunday morning from 12:15 to 12:30 in order to participate in a united meditation.
So this would have been in the middle of the night?
So this would have been
12:15 to 12:30 in the morning?
It says every Sunday morning, so I guess so. Instructions would be sent out on Wednesdays so they could prepare for the Sunday and achieve a single-pointed concentration in order to find success in their meditation goals. Dion Fortune's plan is to help fight World War II through magical means and with the help of magical practitioners throughout Britain. Dion Fortune was born on the 6th of December, 1890 in Wales, to an upper-middle-class family. Her real name was actually Violet Mary Firth. She was a poet and a writer who studied psychology and psychoanalysis at the London University. During World War I, Dion joined the Women's Land Army and started a company where she sold soy products.
The Women's Land Army?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of digging into it. This is just my Cole's Notes version of what it is. During World War I, when all the men were sent off to fight in the war, they had a group of women that they called the Women's Land Army that they basically took over running the farms and the agriculture in the area so that they could still have food.
Okay.
So that's what they titled as the Women's Land Army. Yeah. So she was a ceremonial magician who specialized in intentions and evocations. I won't go into too much about her life because this episode is more about our magical Battle of Britain, but you can always Google her. She led a really interesting life.
Had a bunch of books.
Yeah. Dion's first letter was dated October 8th, 1939. In the first letter, she notes the rules to the members of the Fraternity of Inner Light. So the rules were no participation in politics.
Which is a good rule in general.
Yeah, no kidding. To be fair, who wants to be part of politics during a war? I feel like that's a bad plan.
That's politics on hard mode.
Uh-huh. Rule 2 was to remain bipartisan, so showing no favor to one party or nation. So in keeping with this theme of remaining bipartisan, a French correspondent had sent a letter to Dion asking her why the group didn't use their powers to confuse the German leaders or destroy the lives of the officials who were in charge of the German army.
A fair question. That'd be something they would do if they had magic powers.
100%. Though at this time, I don't think people quite understood how far the war was going to go.
Oh, this was still early on.
This is within a month of the war starting, so...
Okay.
Yeah. We've just barely begun to scratch the surface of what is about to occur. Dion, however, explained in her letters that it would not be a correct method for success. She did not think that anyone could be pure evil, and trying to harm them or confuse them was just not justifiable. The only goal that they should have would be to channel the spiritual forces so that it may fix the problems of the war to find peace.
Get to the root of the problem.
The group mind was to only work for healing and to not focus on hate.
You know, with the whole position that no one is truly completely evil, the Germans were about to give them a run for their
her word.
Really encouraging them to approve that statement.
Oh, don't worry. We address when she eventually decided to give up on the whole bipartisan thing. By letter 3, so 3 weeks in, the group mind of the Fraternity of Inner Light was beginning to see some success from their meditation. Dion noted in this letter that they no longer had to imagine the symbols of the rose upon the cross, but that their visualizations were taking on an astral form. One member during their meditation was able to astral project themselves into the sanctuary at Glastonbury. So, the sanctuary at Glastonbury was their new astral meeting place, and this would be where they would astral project themselves for the group mind meditation.
Okay, so they would leave their bodies from their homes, and then they would all meet at this one location in astral form.
Correct. So she did have a meeting place set up for people who could meet that were living in London, but for those that couldn't, they would astral project from their homes, and they would all meet in this one location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Astral Zoom meeting.
So, they would now visualize the rose cross in a cave under the Hill of Vision. Again, these are things that probably mean something to them.
Oh, that hill.
That's right. But there's no description for those of us who have no clue where the Hill of Vision is.
It's next to the Hill of Smelling and the Hill of Touching.
And there's a cave under it. Just an FYI.
Vision Cave.
Vision Cave. Dion noted in her letter on the 4th week that the ideals and ideas that the group mind were focusing on were beginning to be voiced by the media and politicians, pointing out that it happened way too often for it to just be a coincidence, and starting to take some sort of responsibility for implanting these ideas or influencing these ideas. So this is kind of their first note that they feel like they're starting to show spiritual abilities. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not going to break down each letter because there are a lot of letters, and a lot of them do not contain information that would be interesting enough for this podcast.
Yeah, because there's one letter a week, and the war went for how many weeks? 6 years of weeks?
Yeah, 6 years of weeks. She does eventually give up.
300-ish letters.
She does eventually give up with the once-a-week letters and goes to once a month. So, smart move on her part, because I'm sure she was getting very tired of writing letters. So, as I mentioned before, you can find this book. It is called The Magical Battle of Britain, and it's available everywhere. Chapters had it, Indigo has it, Amazon has it.
Yeah, we saw this book when we were in a New Age gift shop in London.
We did. In the actual letters, it brings up the name of the location of, like, where this secret meeting was occurring. And I was like, oh, I wonder if it's, like, the bookshop we went to. Like, wouldn't that be cool if, like, they were meeting in the basement of the bookshop?
Yeah.
They weren't.
Oh.
It's a real address, but it looks like really fancy smancy houses. So I'm guessing at some point after World War II, they just got all demolished and rebuilt.
Got gentrified.
Yeah. So to continue, in one of the letters, Dion points out that the group is not foolish enough to believe that their meditation is controlling the fate of the nations involved in World War II. But they do note that there is proof that they are beginning to have influence on world affairs. No addressing as to what those are.
It sounds like they wanted to take the credit, but none of the responsibility.
Yes. By the 19th letter, which was on February 25th, 1940, Dion is finally convinced that there is something wrong with Hitler. She is convinced that Hitler is attempting to use occult forces against the group mind of their meditation.
There's something not right about this Hitler chap.
Which they have been observing signs of occult involvement within their meditation for weeks. So they had been noticing what they thought was sabotaging of their psychic meetings. And they assumed that Hitler must be trying to...
They found out.
Yeah.
Someone also astral projected into that church at Glastonbury.
That's right. It's not actually too strange to believe that there is some connection between the Nazis and the occult. Again, this is one of those topics that's a little hard to, like, find legit information because there's so many conspiracy theories out there.
Yeah.
But from the few searches that I did, this is the little bit of information that I got. So there are some online sources stating that the party was actually originally started as an occult organization. So there was a society called the Thule Society, which was the original people who believed in the Aryan race. The Aryan race was supposed to be people who were descendants of the Atlanteans from Atlantis.
Ah.
Yeah. Some of the more recognizable members of the Thule Society were Rudolf Hess, Alfred Rosenberg, and Dietrich Eckart. The Thule Society, like many other occult organizations in Germany, were quashed under Nazi control because of Heinrich Himmler's Rasputin-like personal occultist, Karl Maria Willignet.
Carl's not putting up with any competition.
You know, yeah, it makes me wonder, because, like, when I went to look up Carl, it's actually a woman.
Oh.
I don't know if you caught that, but her middle name is Maria.
Maria. Carl Maria.
Yeah.
We shall name our beautiful baby girl Carl.
I was kind of hoping she would look more Rasputin-like, but she looks pretty normal, I gotta say.
She didn't have crazy eyes.
Nope. She had curly hair. I guess some people could say that's crazy. As we mentioned, there are a lot of crazy theories out there about the involvement of the occult on the Nazi side during World War II, but I couldn't find anything directly mentioning occultist attacks on Allied forces. So if something existed, I can't find it.
He didn't have an A-team of psychics and had it widely published.
That's correct. The 19th letter is also where it appears that Dion Fortune is no longer on the fence. So as I noted, she talked about concern about Hitler trying to become psychically involved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at some point, she also read Mein Kampf. And after reading it, she decides that the Nazis must be stopped.
This ain't good.
No. So, in one of the letters, she mentions that she had a premonition in which a man is standing on a cliff and can see ships approaching the shore, but it kind of feels like a weak premonition. Like, there's nothing more than that. She just mentions there's a guy standing on a cliff looking at the water, and he can see ships approaching the shore.
I feel like that happens everywhere.
Well, and especially because we know World War II was fought in land, sea, and air. Like, anyone could have seen warships approaching from anywhere. And it's no description of the man. Like, it doesn't say whether it's a German man or a British man. Like, it's just a man. So...
Yeah. When we were in Whitby, I was a man on a cliff looking out at ships.
That's true. She prophesized that. In another premonition that the group saw, she recounted the idea of a beam of power going from England across France and then stopping to rest on North Africa.
Beam of power.
A beam of power. After seeing the vision, France was actually taken over by German forces, and the French colonies in Africa announced that they would not yield to enemy forces, but would continue to fight the war. So they stated that at the time when they received the premonition, they didn't know what it meant, but in light of the details about the French colonies in Africa, it finally made sense to them.
Okay. Which kind of makes your premonitions not terribly useful.
No. Especially if you have to, like, bizarrely interpret them. Like, what kind of premonition is that?
I see a beam of power, and everyone's like, ooh, yes. Hopefully not a death ray.
Mm-hmm. So on October 27th, 1940, the location where the Fraternity of Inner Light had been meeting was destroyed in a bombing raid. The week prior to the destruction, the Fraternity of Inner Light had been asked to meditate on protective images. Take that for what you will. They were asking to get protective images, and then their place got blown up.
Obviously, there was a German psychic team. And here's what they thought about their namby-pamby protective images.
That's right. The group set about trying to rebuild their sanctuary, which slowed down their meditations for a bit. The letters after, for a little while there, is just basically talking about like the progress of trying to rebuild. So here's another funny anecdote. Again, history, hindsight is 2020. We can see how premature this is, but on September 21st, 1941, Dion announces to her group that the war has already been won on the inner planes, so on the psychic level.
Inner planes. Sorry, what was the date?
September 21st, 1941.
A little premature.
She's got a few years to go.
I mean, maybe the psychic planes were won.
We have no way of knowing. However, in her next letter on October 5th, 1941, she warns her group that Hitler is a natural occultist and a highly developed medium, and that he can use his powers to help him with military matters.
Oh, a dark lord.
Yup.
It's a Sith lord.
In addition, she believes he's using astrologers to figure out timing for attacks.
But would Carl have accepted that? Because she made them get rid of all of the Thule Society groups.
That's right. So her hopes that the World War had been won already were further dashed a few months later when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and World War II was finally announced as a global war.
Well, in her defense, she was only looking at like Germany and Europe. Japan's very far from where they were.
That's correct.
She would have seen what China was up to before she saw what Japan was up to.
I mean, Pearl Harbor's a little bit closer, but not by much.
I think that's even farther away.
Is it? Oh, I guess.
Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii. The last weekly letter was dated on September 27th, 1942. This was letter 136.
Cramped hand by now.
In October of 1942, she switched to monthly letters instead. So most of the letters for the rest of the war discussed her views on the war, and then had discussions about psychic teachings. There wasn't really much about premonitions or what they thought they'd influenced and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of ends the anecdotes for our podcast because there isn't really anything to...
Yeah, by the time, like, if you've already declared the war has been won and you're not even a third into the war, I mean, do you just keep going? Like, sure, there's, like, cult leaders out there that claim, oh, the world is going to end on this date, and then the day passes, and then they're robust-minded. They're like, oh, I interpreted the imagery wrong. It's going to be next Wednesday.
Well, also by this point, she'd written a bunch of books. And so on top of writing all these letters, she's also writing books. And her books that she's writing are on how to teach people who are magical to use their powers or to heal themselves or to etc., etc. And so she basically starts getting into that idea of teaching people instead of trying to fight the war anymore.
Okay.
There's also, because with the addition of America to World War II, we start seeing a lot of pushback from the Allies, right? Like, suddenly there's this major force to be reckoned with, and that was kind of the turning point for World War II, was once the States kind of joined in on it. And so because of that, we see her focusing less on it because they can see the success of the actual war itself starting to, like, the tides are starting to turn.
Okay. They're ready to let everyone else handle the rest.
Kind of. The letters read like that.
It's a good move, her teaching, like, other people to use their magical powers. Because, like, if you're going to defeat a natural black magician, I forget the phraseology she used for Hitler.
A natural occultist.
Natural occultist. You just combat him with hundreds and hundreds of, like, little occultists.
That's right.
It's like that. Who would win in a fight, 1,000 chickens or a Tyrannosaurus?
Yes, 100%. That is exactly what's going on. It's 1,000 of tiny occultists versus Hitler. So her very last letter was written on the 25th of March, 1944. And it ends with the paragraph, "Each man lives his own life in his own age, and in his own place. None may live for another, and none should judge for another. Be loyal to your own truth at all costs. It is your only sound foundation. The blessing of the Master is on all who serve." So, unfortunately, in late 1945, so shortly after the war ended, Dion became ill and she died of leukemia in January of 1946. So she only got to see the end of the war, and then...
I mean, it's good that she got to see the end. You wouldn't want to die before.
No. And I was kind of expecting there to be people that are like, oh, she used up all her energy to... And maybe there were people that believed that. She used up all her energy to fight the psychic forces of the Nazis and ended up dying because of it.
Mm-hmm. It's a good story.
It's a good story. She was buried in a churchyard at the St. John's Church in Glastonbury, and you can still visit her grave. It's covered in flowers. It's hard to miss. I do think that there's a lot of people that go out there to kind of thank her for what she did, even though I don't know if I'm a believer, but...
Hey, the psychic planes were one.
That's right. I mean, she sounds like a nice person. She was doing what she could. So that's the story of Dion Fortune and the Magical Battle of Britain.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I remember we saw that book in the occult bookstore, and I was like, what could this possibly be about? How have I not heard of the Magical Battle of Britain? It's such a grandiose name. You'd think that it would be more widely heard of. It would be interesting to know how many different magical groups were attempting to take down the natural occult master in Germany.
Mm-hmm. If you do decide to read the book, the one thing that's kind of neat that they do is she wrote the letters, but the person who took over writing the book has little anecdotes about, because he knew her in real life, so he has little anecdotes about what she thought here or whatever else. And then they also list points in history. So they'll have this is the day Germany declared war on Britain. This is the day that Churchill's "We will storm them on the beaches" speech was played. All that sort of stuff. So you can see some of those important parts in World War II.
Saves you some Googling while you're reading to see what happened on these days.
Yeah. So it was kind of neat to read through it and see some of that stuff. But it is very wordy.
Very wordy.
Very wordy. And as I said before, there's a lot of stuff where it seems like they expect us to know what is happening, but because we are not part of the fraternity of inner light, I have no clue.
Well, we'll book a trip to Vision Hill in the cave underneath.
Yeah, and meditate.
We will feed in the Magical Battle of Britain into the cursometer and get what it says about the events. All right, into the cursometer it goes.
Please stand by.
And the results are...
The results are probably benign.
I agree. Nobody got hurt, or at least she admitted to in her diary.
Yeah, and she was a really nice person. At the beginning, she really just was trying to get peace. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She just wanted the war to end. Not understanding, not as simple as just hoping for peace. And again, she seemed like a really nice lady. She helped with World War I. She wanted to do her part for World War II, and this seemed to be a good way for her to do her part. And I bet through those group meditations and the letters and everything else, for some people it probably helped them get through the war. Just having that idea that all these people are gathered in one idea to try.
It's almost like a superhero tale.
Yeah.
A collection of Doctor Stranges. Thanks for doing all that research.
You're welcome.
And reading old-timey writings. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Probably Cursed podcast. Tune in to us next month for our new topic. We have new episodes on the last day of every month. And as I've said before, also check out our Probably Cursed museum and gift shop on Etsy, probablycursed.etsy.com, to view the artifacts that we release with every episode.
If you have any episode suggestions, or maybe you've got something at your own house that you think is probably cursed and you want it gone, you can send us an email at probablycursedpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you and your magical cabal are working together to stop any wars right now, we're wishing you a whole lot of luck in your endeavor. Mm-hmm. Stop the war.
In Ukraine.
In Ukraine, in Israel, in... oh gosh, everywhere these days.
Uh-huh.
Fox News says there's a war on Christmas. Yeah.
I don't think we need to stop that war, though.
It's true. If you are bringing peace into the world, we wish you great success.
Mm-hmm.